Monica Saxena, thanks very much for joining in on this special show. Over the last couple of months, the Indian markets have been flush with liquidity coming in from both foreign and domestic investors. But will this rally continue? And what lies ahead as far as exchanges are concerned? What are the key concerns? What really lies ahead? What's the next growth area for these exchanges? We caught up with the top exchanges of the country. We'll get you top voices over the next 30 minutes. But to begin with, let's listen in to Vikram Limaye, the CEO of the National Stock Exchange. Well, I have with me Vikram Limaye. Vikram, it's been a while since you spoke to us. So let's talk about a couple of developments that have come up. One is the possibility of a uniform license that SEBI is looking at, perhaps creating a platform where you have securities and commodities together. SEBI has indicated that they're working on the process on creating that uniform entity. But how would this work, and what does this mean for you?
So as you know, today NSE is not permitted to trade in commodities or permitted to offer a platform that trades commodities. What SEBI is talking about, as they have done for brokers, where equities and commodities licenses have been combined and the same broker can offer all services, equities and commodities. Likewise, the plan is to permit exchanges, therefore, to get into all asset classes. What that means for NSE is a new growth area, because right now we're not in commodities. If SEBI were to come up with a framework that allows exchanges to be in all asset classes, we will also get into commodities. So that will be a new growth area for NSE.
But that is something that you would...
That is something that we are expecting, because the first step was to permit brokers to be in all asset classes under a unified license. The next step will be to allow exchanges to get into all asset classes as well.
Okay. Vikram, since you've taken over, there has, of course, been a lot of volume that has been coming in, but there is a certain amount of uncertainty with respect to what lies ahead. How sustainable is this rally that we are seeing? What has your path been in the last couple of months to ensure at least the lack of uncertainty that we are seeing right now?
See, I think it's fair to say that while GDP growth has slowed down in the last quarter, the liquidity in markets has been exceedingly strong.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
For a couple of months, the FIIs actually pulled out in August, September, but then again in October they've come back. And domestic liquidity in mutual funds has been very strong. If you look at financial savings and the amount of money that's going into markets from financial savings, that's also improved quite a bit. And you look at the SIP trends, you look at the flows into mutual funds, all that has been very strong. So largely the markets have done well on account of liquidity and on account of more money coming into equities, because the alternative asset classes.
How sustainable is this liquidity in the system right now?
It is sustainable to the extent that people believe in the India growth story, which there's no reason why people shouldn't.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think to the extent that alternative asset classes, defined as fixed income, gold and real estate, are not as attractive as equities, people will keep moving more and more money into equities. And whether it is just straight equity exposure or it's balanced funds, whatever it is, people will have a portfolio mix that is appropriate for their risk appetite. And so you're seeing more money move into equities on account of that. Partly on account of the fact that alternative asset classes are not as attractive, partly on account of the fact that people are optimistic about the future growth of the economy. And so I don't see this, the liquidity drying up anytime soon, unless there is any kind of exogenous shock, because of which, you know, people's risk appetite suddenly goes down.
What would be the driving factor then? Do you expect more coming in from foreign or domestic?
It'll be both. I think.
Combination of both.
Yeah, and I think
you don't expect FIIs to perhaps hit the pause button for some time after this?
They could, but I mean, my point is, if somebody takes a longer term view, it is very hard to stay out of India. True. And I think growth will pick up, although the last quarter growth, GDP growth was 5.7%.
Exactly. Yeah.
All expectations are that going forward, over the next 12 months, growth will pick up. And so there's no reason why people shouldn't be optimistic about the prospects for the economy.
Okay. Vikram, as far, a lot has been talked about this. So let me just get your perspective here. As far as the extension of trading hours is concerned, a lot of you have come on record and clarified that, there's nothing final yet. But what would you prefer?
See, my point is one of whether we have to do whatever is good for markets and good for investors. Okay, that has to be the philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what all of us should be thinking about.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, if you look at creating a level playing field for domestic investors and foreign investors, you need to have a mechanism in place that puts them on par. Today what ends up happening is that our market shut down at 3:30, and international investors, if they want to hedge, they're able to hedge in offshore markets, whether it's Singapore or Dubai, etc. At a minimum, I think we should think about providing at least an index hedging mechanism to domestic investors into later in the evening or at night. I mean, the commodity markets remain open till 11:30 anyway. So even if you were to provide an index hedge, I'm not saying the entire market needs to be kept open as a start. I don't think there is any precedent to that either. Internationally, you don't have cash markets open for 20 hours. But you have to be able to provide some hedging mechanism to domestic investors. It can't be that foreign investors are able to hedge event risk and domestic investors are unable to do that. So that's just a point of principle, that we have to try and get a level playing field for domestic and foreign investors.
What has SEBI said so far? What is the clarity? By when is there expected to be a decision taken on extension or not?
I don't think it is on a path where they have a deadline by which they need to make a decision. I think they're talking to all stakeholders. They're looking at what different people are saying. And there will be more discussion before any kind of decision is taken. So at this point in time, it's not any kind of burning issue, priority that has to be resolved in the next 2 weeks or 1 month or any of that.
If you were to look at what we have been talking about, and a complete extension of the equity trading hours, what would the preferred be? We were hearing 5 p.m., we were hearing 7 p.m. What works?
No, I mean, my point is it depends on what you're trying to do. So like I said, if you want to provide an index hedge, as a limited window available for domestic investors, so that they at least have some hedging mechanism, keep it open till 11:30. What does 5 o'clock do? I mean, ultimately when the US opens and you're not open, if there's something that happens in the United States or in some other part of the world, you have to be able to, protect your portfolio in some way. So.
Okay. The other question I wanted to ask is, you've already said that, the NSE IPO will happen once SEBI's co-location issue is sorted out. How long would it take? Once this issue is closed, how long would it take for the IPO to go through?
See, as I've said before, we need to refile the DRHP, right? That will only be done once we have some clarity and visibility surrounding what we're going to be doing with this issue. Once we file the DRHP, then you know the timeline. I mean, SEBI will take a month to review it, etc., etc. It also has to be done off the right set of numbers. So the numbers have to be current. So depending on when this issue gets resolved, we'll have to then look at when the audited numbers for that particular period or the quarter or whenever the logical point is that we get audited numbers done. That will have to play a role in the timing. So those are really the two things. I mean, it will be the DRHP and the numbers that will then drive the process once we have clarity on with how this issue is going to be resolved.
By when are you expecting the co-location?
I don't want to give a timeline because right now I haven't heard back from SEBI on the timeline. They are still awaiting certain information. They are conducting some investigation and analysis. So once they have all that information, I'm sure they'll come back with what their approach will be.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you. That was the CEO of the National Stock Exchanges speaking exclusively to CNBC TV18. Let's take a quick break. On the other side, we will get you the CEO of the other big exchange in the country, the Bombay Stock Exchange.